You guys can all see that, okay? Yes, yes. I think we're looking at the same
Yes.
thing. Yep.
Yes.
All right. So, fueling fat loss without giving up the foods you love. We're going to talk about hormones. We're going to talk about deficits. We're going to talk about how to pull this all together. I can tell you, as someone who's been in the industry for a really long time, I have seen it all. I've seen all the deprivation. I've seen all the diets. I have literally seen it all, and I've done a lot. I've never been one to really need to lose a lot of weight, but I have certainly felt the pressure to have lower composition. I have quite literally had when I first started in the industry, um, some trainers who would basically come by and like poke my belly fat. I'm just like, what is that about? And just because I never looked like a lot of the fitness girls, I don't have big boobs or big butt or tiny, tiny waist. I've always been a little bit more athletic looking. And the reality is that we can control how much we can control mostly the composition of our body, meaning muscle versus body fat. But we don't control necessarily where that's stored, right? So, like how it looks. I don't control the fact that I'm 6'2". I don't control the fact that from a hereditary standpoint, when I do have a little bit extra fat, it's going to go straight to my midsection. That's just thanks to mom and dad, right? So there are those certain, some of you may be like, well, I'm more like a pear. We don't control all of that, but we do have a lot of influence over the composition itself. And so, what I want to do is walk you through the basic foundations of how you can start to work with that. First, we're going to go a quick review from last week. We talked about the metabolism, and I want you to think of it in terms of being more like a barometer, particularly a stress barometer versus a calculator. What that means is that it is just always trying to figure out what's going on in terms of externally, internally, and then making adjustments from there. So we don't want to just get stuck thinking in terms of calories in versus calories out. We want to think of it in terms of how your metabolic system is functioning and the choices that it's making. A lot of times I hear my metabolism is broken, and that is not true because if it was in fact broken, you would be dead. It is just prioritizing you staying alive. It will also prioritize, we talked about the first thing it'll prioritize is keeping you alive, and the second is sexual function and reproduction, and it will ditch reproduction in an effort to keep you alive. So it's just choosing which systems to give energy to at any given time. And a healthy metabolism requires a healthy relationship with it. So it's not about why isn't it doing what I want it to do? When a lot of us have spent too much time with long ass lists of to-dos to do during the day. We're living off coffee during the day, we're nibbling on stuff, and then at night we're trying to get to sleep by, drinking wine. And then on the weekends we go out and we're eating out at fast food or at restaurants, and we're not getting enough sleep, we're not getting enough movement, and then we're going to the metabolism and going, why aren't you working? Right? So we want to start to think of it in terms of a relationship instead of just why aren't you doing what I want you to do and you're broken and you hate me. So, questions from last week. Did anybody have any issues with BMR, figuring out what your BMR roughly is? Any ways that maybe you discovered that you're unintentionally slowing down your metabolic rate? And then what changes did you try this last week? I'm going to open up really quick in terms of questions on that. You can either type them in the chat, you can just use your microphone, or you can use video microphone. I don't care which one you do. Going once.
I'll say I have incorporated protein into my morning smoothie. I've also decided not to do intermittent fasting because it was really feeling wrong for me and like it was going to cause more harm than good, as we discussed. So I stopped doing that. And I almost immediately stopped retaining so much water. So I dropped like 2 pounds of water weight. And I'm sleeping better. Just a little bit, small changes, but acknowledging that intermittent fasting, which is such a craze, is probably not right for me, and trying something different by fueling with protein in the morning and having a little appropriate snack if I need it before bed um, feels really good. Yeah.
I love this share. And what I love about it is a couple things. Number one, you were willing to change the way you thought about it, because that's hard sometimes, right? We're like, no, it's got to be this way. All this stuff is telling me that it needs to be this. And also that you noticed how you felt when you did something else. So I get this all the time, and I'll get questions on this. It's like, hey, I see all this all the time where somebody's like, oh, I ate more, and then I started eating more, and then I lost weight, right? Or I added protein, and now I'm not. My cravings have gone away. So it is about learning how to best fuel your system so that it operates at its highest level. I love that for you, Tanya. That's a good share. Real quick. BMR is fine. How do we break down the macros? We're going to talk about macros. That's a good question. I know I've had a couple people ask me about macros. I'm going to go through this, and then at the end, we'll talk a little bit more about macros. So don't let me forget, bring it back around. We will talk about that. It's not in the slides, but I will definitely talk about that. Anything else? I don't see anything else. I think we're good. Onward we go. All right. So I don't know if you guys have ever seen this, like, it's almost like a debate on social media, right? It's like, no, it's hormones. No, it's calories, right? And the reality is that it does require both hormonal balance or optimization, and a caloric deficit if your goal is to lose weight and or possibly drop body fat. We'll dive into that. It is slightly different. But the truth is that by optimizing your hormones first, it makes hitting a deficit so much more doable. Now, I'll interchange optimizing versus balancing. You'll also see this on social media, that there is no true balance of hormones. That's true, right? Like there's no one static state where your hormones need to be. They're constantly fluctuating based on what's going on externally and what's going on internally. But we use that term as a way for people to understand that they're in a place where they are optimized. Most people don't think in terms of like optimizing. They're like, what does that mean? So I will interchange both of those. Here's why we want to, or what I recommend that you do first in terms of optimizing your hormones, and why you would want to do that is because hormones control so much. They control whether you are fat burning or whether you're fat storing. They control that. They affect things like your energy. We're going to talk about this. They affect your energy level, your hunger cues, and your craving levels. How hard is it going to be to stay in a deficit if you're battling cravings all day, every day? The chances of you actually being able to stick with that for any length of time are pretty slim. If you're constantly tired, you're going to reach more for sugar, right? Like you're going to reach for things to try to satisfy yourself. And so if your hormones are off, right, your results are going to stall no matter how clean you're eating. So we want to make sure that those, and I'm going to give you kind of a broad scope of how you can tell if you are balanced or optimized, and a simple way to do that. But the reality is that you do need both. You need your hormones optimized or balanced, and then if your goal is fat loss or weight loss, then you do need a deficit. You need both. It's not either or. Now, here are the 4 hormones that are going to matter most for fat loss. You can see over here the hormone hierarchy to the right. This is showing you the foundation of the things that matter and have the biggest impact. The first one, or the first 2, are leptin and ghrelin. They're actually kind of lumped together. You're probably hearing more and more about leptin now that GLPs are more common. Leptin actually regulates satiation and fat burning with signals to the brain regarding energy balance. So leptin, when you're looking at these GLPs, what they do a couple things. Number one, they increase your leptin levels so you just feel more satiated. They also slow digestion in the gut. And so everything just kind of slows down. And so it basically, it kills your hunger cues, right? Or it decreases them significantly. So that is what leptin does. And that's why that matters. Ghrelin is the opposing hormone. Ghrelin, I'm hungry. It stimulates hunger cues and it actually promotes fat storage. So we want to make sure that those two are fairly balanced. We're going to talk about how you can do that using Simple things like food, recovery, things like that. Insulin manages, this is a simple version, manages blood sugar. It also has a hand in fat storage. Keep in mind though, insulin is also required to build muscle, which most people don't know. Insulin creates the protein synthesis. So that all that protein that you're trying to get in, insulin helps that protein synthesis so that you can then build muscle. It is required for it. So it's like what we call a builder hormone. And so it can either increase fat storage or it can help increase muscle, right? But it does help manage blood sugar. It's a very necessary hormone. Cortisol, which gets a bad rap, is known as the stress hormone or the fight or flight hormone. When unchecked, it puts your system in fat storage. So just know cortisol should have a natural circadian rhythm. So if you didn't turn on your alarm in the morning to wake you up, and you just wake up naturally, the thing that wakes you up is cortisol. They call it a cortisol awakening response. So typically what happens is your body temperature starts to heat up, cortisol starts to come up, and that's what wakes you up. And so it will, after you wake up, it will continue to climb for a little bit. It will typically peak out. Everybody's different, somewhere around 90 minutes or so after you are awake. And then it should slowly just kind of drift back off so that it goes down and you start calming down towards the end of the day, and that it drops back off at the end of the day as you're trying to go to sleep. Now, cortisol and melatonin actually oppose each other. So as cortisol rises, melatonin drops. And as cortisol drops, melatonin rises. And that's a natural circadian rhythm. Cortisol will also peak really quick when you need it for fight or flight, for workouts, during times of stress. It helps you manage those things. But what we don't want is for it to peak out and then it's just like riding like this and then having a hard time coming back down. And you can also get what we call upside down cortisol, where it's really low all day and then it peaks at night. So if you're just super tired throughout the day, sometimes that could be low cortisol throughout the day, even though you're stressed. And then it will rise at night. And then at the end of the night, you're like, God, I'm so tired. I bet you I'm going to sleep great. And then you're wide awake. You're like, why am I not tired? It's typically because your cortisol is flipped, right? So we want that in a natural circadian rhythm. So if you look at the hormone hierarchy, you'll see that at the bottom here, leptin and ghrelin are the foundation because they control fat burning, fat storage. They control those things too, but they also control your energy, hunger, cravings, things like that. And then insulin and cortisol are going to have a big impact on your blood sugar and whether you are storing or burning fat or adding muscle, things like that. No questions so far. Does that make sense? So there is no hormone that's good or bad. They don't do just one thing. This is just a simplified way of looking at them in terms of what's necessary for survival and which ones are the most impactful when it comes to fat loss. We won't go into thyroid and adrenal or sex hormones. We'll save that for another day. All right. So let's start with leptin and ghrelin. Here are simple ways to start balancing or optimizing those. We talked about this with Tanya. Stop skipping meals. Just stop skipping meals. The reason being is that when you don't eat, and even though research will show you without food, your blood sugar levels are going to drop off, especially in midlife. When your blood sugar levels drop too low, cortisol comes up to push it up, and now you're out of whack. So why bother? Also, what will happen is then all of a sudden ghrelin kicks in, and when you do go to eat, you're going to overeat instead of having balanced meals. So the goal is to have fairly balanced meals throughout the day. I will openly tell you that I have always been the one that eats about 5 times a day. Every 3 hours, like clockwork. I don't need to check my watch. My brain and body will be like, it's time to eat. And I don't have to think about it. It's just I know that on schedule, about every 3 hours, my body's going to require more food. That doesn't mean you need to eat 5 times a day. I would say let's start with at least 3 so that you're getting fueled properly. And then if you feel like you need something in between to kind of we can take a look at, I'll give you biofeedback so you can take a look at that and how to determine that. You can start to determine whether you need to eat little snacks in between to kind of keep that blood sugar more stable. But please stop skipping meals. Get adequate sleep, which for most people is going to be 7 to 9 hours. I know that's hard in midlife. We can talk about that if you guys remind me. I can tell you the things that help with sleep if that's an issue. For workouts, we want the Goldilocks zone, the sweet spot. We're not looking at burning calories per se. We're looking for a metabolic and hormonal response from our workouts. And if done efficiently, you should require recovery. So we need that sweet spot. I can tell you, I used to be somebody who could lift 5 days a week. I am not that person anymore. I can't. I can hit about 4 when I'm on a good roll. When I'm feeling good, I can hit 4. When I'm not, it's like maybe 3 and they're scaled back. So we're looking for that sweet spot. And then when it comes to nutrition, you want to prioritize what I call the big three. And that is water, protein, and fiber. We're going to talk about why those are the big three and why you want to focus on those. No questions. Okay. How do we eat to support all of this? We're going to talk about the nutrition big three. Why just focus on 3 nutrition habits? Now, I will get and I will answer the questions that you guys have, but a lot of times what I will do is I will redirect you back and go, are you hitting the big three first? And the reason is that not all nutritional decisions carry the same weight in impact. So, for example, I'll have people ask me, what's the best thing to eat before a workout? What's the best thing to eat after a workout? What's another nutrition question? I get a lot of them, right? And again, I'll always come back to these going, listen, like you're looking at the minor things. I want you to get the things that have the biggest impact on your hormones. And then we can layer some other stuff in. Your brain, our human brains are wired for automation. So your brain doesn't want to change anything. And you know this if you've ever been somebody who's like, I just need to drink more water. And then yet for some reason you can't manage to drink more water because you forget. Yeah, because your brain is like, I don't want to think about that. Right. So you just have to know that about our human brain. We want to keep things as simple as possible. All or nothing almost always leads to nothing. And you want to build these 3 in, the things that have the biggest impact, and then you can layer in other strategies as those things become second nature. All right, here are the big 3 and why. We're going to go into those 2. Big 3 are water, protein, and fiber. When we're looking at nutrition, whatever your goal is, this is where you start and it's where you always come back to. My one-on-one clients always hear this where they're like, I'm doing this. And I'm like, okay, but we kind of got off track. Let's just go to these. Like, how are we doing with these? And as you do this more and more, what you will find is that you just naturally get better at them. So like, for example, over the holidays, all of my clients will come back and be like, oh my God, I was terrible. But if they've been with me for a little bit, when I go back and go, well, how were you doing in terms of water? Oh, I drank more water than I normally did. Or I did drink a little bit more alcohol than I normally do, but I did make sure I drank more water. Or yeah, no, I still had a decent amount of protein throughout the day. It just wasn't where we always want it. So the goal is to just get better and better at those things, even if you fall off once in a while. All right, let's talk about why water. Water hydrates your cells, supports healthy metabolism. It curbs hunger and craving. So some of you may have heard this before. If you are noticing that you're hungry, first thing you want to do is drink some water because you could just be dehydrated. Your body could just be asking for water. And the reason that it will do that is your brain is smart enough to know that when you eat food, it will get some hydration from it. If it's asking for it that way, you know you're really behind because it's getting desperate. It's like, all right, we'll just make her hungry. Water is also going to help with digestion and detoxification. So it's going to get all the detoxification and the detoxes out of your system. It is going to aid in digestion. A good rule of thumb is half your weight in ounces. That's a good rule of thumb. It's not going to be perfect. If you live in a drier climate, you probably are going to need more. If you are someone who sweats a lot, maybe you do a lot of running or people who do CrossFit, right? Like you may need a little bit more water. So kind of keep that in mind. 2 things to keep in mind. 1, we don't want to drink a ton of water around food because water will kind of wash away some of the digestive enzymes that your body is trying to produce and doesn't produce as much anymore. So we don't want that. So try to get most of your water away from food. And then the other is, and this one is tricky, you kind of got to play with it a little bit. If you notice that you're drinking a bunch of water and it's just literally just going through you, like you just pee it out almost immediately, it just means that you don't have enough of um, the electrolytes in your system. Those electrolytes pull the water into the cell. And if you don't have enough electrolytes, it doesn't get pulled in, it just goes right back out. So keep those in mind. Now, that being said, one of the things that they will use in electrolytes is sodium. And as we talked about, I think before, manufacturers are putting more sodium in stuff. And if you have, like me, blood pressure issues, it's something to be aware of. I think I saw somebody raise their hand. Hold. Don, did you
It's
raise
me.
your hand?
I
Yeah.
did. To
Question.
clarify, when you say drink water away from food, do you mean not necessarily counting a significant amount of water-based foods like cucumbers and fruits, or did you literally mean like not drinking so much water when you are eating?
That. That's what I mean. I mean, and drinking a little bit of water with your food. Yeah, that's fine. We want to kind of help wash it down. But what sometimes people will do is just like, oh, I'm eating. Let me just slam a bunch of water now. Or they'll do let me just slam a bunch of water so that I'm not hungry. And the problem with that is that then you just don't have the digestive enzymes to help digest the food and you're just bloated and sloshing around.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Oh, hold on. To reach my weight in ounces is that straight up water or include water from hot tea as long as it's not a dehydrator. So caffeine will pull water from your system as long as you are. So like, for example, this is not alcohol. I brought this just so I can show you guys. If you guys like Aperol spritz, I got this at Target. It's alcohol free. And I just use like 2 ounces of that. And then I use it is iced sparkling water and lemonade. And then I just put sparkling water on the top so that it's not too sweet. And so technically that's water, right? There's nothing in it that's going to pull from that. So I would count everything that's truly water. I have clients who have a hard time with just straight water. And so they'll do things, they'll do different sparkling waters or seltzers or whatever. As long as that, you can count that, that's fine. Does that help, Rebecca? Uh-huh. How long should we wait before, in terms of water? I'd give it at least, like if you're slamming it, like I would give it at least a half an hour to like help that absorb before you start eating. There's no like rule. I would play with it because you'll notice like you just don't digest as well because those are getting flushed back out. Watch the sparkling waters because they do have um, sugar alcohols or sugar substitutes that can affect the gut. So I do have to be careful with those to make sure I'm not drinking them too much because I will get, it's not calories per se, but it's just my gut doesn't like it and I get a little bloaty. How do you prevent from going to the bathroom in the middle of the night? That is a great question. That is a loaded question. There's a couple things that will affect that. Number one, try to drink more water in the morning. So I don't have it with me because I have a little drink here, but the Stanley that you guys see me carrying around all the time, I put BCAAs in that first thing in the morning. I'm not going to go down the BCAAs rabbit hole right this second, but I put BCAAs and a little bit of lemon juice in that. And I would say probably 3/4 of that is gone by the time I hit the 6 a.m. class because I'm trying to rehydrate because all night I haven't had anything to drink. And then as I get closer to afternoon, I start scaling back. So that's why I don't really have by afternoon, I don't really have my Stanley with me anymore because I've already had at least one and a half. Sometimes like today I had already two. And so I'll sip on this and I'm good. Um, the other thing that you can take a look at, bathroom in the middle of the night, and this could be affecting if you are in perimenopause or menopause. What happens is as estrogen starts to drop off, we have what's called vaginal estrogen. And so as that drops off, you experience that you have to urinate more frequently. You notice that when you have to go, and you just don't have the ability to hold it as much. And so it could be from either getting too much water before bed, or it could be from a lack of estrogen in the vagina. And you can get vaginal estrogen inserts, and they do help. Hopefully that helps. I don't want to go down too far down that rabbit hole, but hopefully that helps a little bit. I have a health thing where I have to drink water with food. How much will impact? Everybody's different, Eli. I would just test it. I'm not sure how much water I drink. Some with food. I just don't drink a lot. Again, it's the large volume just because you're eating. I would avoid that, but definitely you can drink some water with food. That's fine. And then how much everybody's a little bit different. As we age, our body just doesn't produce as many digestive enzymes. And so too much water will just start to wash away the little that we're producing. If it's still a problem, you can always take digestive enzymes with your food. That's also an option. I think you mean BCAAs. BCAAs are branched chain amino acids. Remind me, Tanya, I'm going to get through all of this and then I'll circle back to that at the end and we'll answer that one. It's a good question. I love my BCAAs. All right, so there's water. Let's keep going. We're going to talk about protein. Everybody's talking about protein, which is good. Here's why. Protein preserves and helps build muscle. So if you are losing weight and or fat, again, they are different, your system doesn't necessarily differentiate between the two. It actually prefers to burn muscle, which is why you're seeing with GLPs, everybody's like, you got to make sure you're getting enough protein. You got to be lifting weights, because what will happen is the metabolic system it prefers to burn off muscle instead of fat. And so a lot of these people who are not getting enough protein and are not lifting weights, they're losing up to 40% of their weight from muscle, which is scary. So basically what protein does is, and the reason that your body prefers to do that is that muscle is what we call more metabolically expensive. It is what keeps your metabolism higher. So your body's like, get rid of that. It's expensive. So protein kind of goes in and it can't keep it from burning it off, but it kind of puts up a little sign that's like, no, not this. Like, please don't take this. So it does kind of help preserve the muscle that you have. You also need it in order, along with insulin, to build muscle. It increases your metabolic rate because, for a number of reasons, but mainly because it is harder to digest, which is why you see there the asterisk is that ideally we want 1 gram per goal body weight. So let's say you're 250 pounds, don't eat 250 grams of protein. Let's say your goal is 150, then get to 150. But if you're not used to eating that much, I always start with getting up to 100 grams first and then titrating it up, because it is harder to digest. And as we just talked about, you don't have as many digestive enzymes to break that down. And you may need to take additional enzymes to help break that down. Protein also, yes. Tanya, do you have a question?
That number is shocking to me. I'm struggling I'm eating protein in every meal. I'm now adding a protein powder. It's like, that's a tremendous amount of protein. So it's like a full-time job, kind of making sure you get enough protein if you're 65 pounds like I am.
So
I don't know. That's not really a question.
it's a statement that everybody says
Yeah.
when you first do it. Everybody feels it. And the reason that it feels that way is because you haven't done it yet. It's not what you're programmed to do. So remember, your brain likes automation. And so it's like, no, right? I eat 165 grams of protein like it's clockwork. I don't even have to think about it. The reason that I can do this is I've been doing it for so long, right? So I would say the biggest thing, if you're having a hard time getting it up that high, it's because you're thinking that your 3 ounces of chicken or peanut butter, or especially if you're vegetarian, things like beans. I think, Tanya, are you vegetarian? No, okay. So if you are, or even pescatarian, that gets tricky, that beans are not a protein. they're a carbohydrate. Peanut butter and nuts and what are the other ones that people count? I think those are the big ones. Those are not protein sources. They have protein in them, but they're fat sources. And so if you're doing small amounts of protein or like a couple of eggs, okay, well, that gets you like 12, right? Like, how do you bump that up? And so the reality is that you have to get used to focusing on the big protein sources, and that's going to be eggs, egg whites, Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, animal protein, protein powder. I mean, those are the big ones, right? Animal protein being a full amino acid profile. So this is where it gets tricky for people who are vegetarian. Not impossible, but it is a little trickier, right? So for example, in the morning, I'm now on a waffle kick. Who knew? Mainly because it's easy, but it's like a scoop of protein that's 20 grams, one egg, a quarter cup egg whites. My oats have protein in them. Sometimes I'll put just a little bit of Greek yogurt, right? So then I kind of build it up so that it ends up being over 40 grams of protein. You just have to learn how to build them as you go. Does that make sense? But a lot of times it's like, oh, I had 3 ounces or a couple of rolls of turkey, or right. It's because that you think that having that amount is enough when you're like, no, you need like 4 to 5 ounces of animal protein. And then you build everything else around that. Let me grab these questions real quick. Meal prep is a game changer, 30 grams per meal at least. It makes a huge difference. Can you recommend any bioidentical enzymes to help digest what you eat? I forget the name of the one. There's several that are on the market that are good. I will say this, when it comes to supplements, if you're spending $5 on a supplement and it's one of those hard tablets, you might as well throw your money away. Like the $5 it's doing you no good. I'm not a fan of those hard tablets of any kind because they're bait and they basically, the way they have so much glues in them to hold that together that it's forcing your body to try to break that down to get to the very little bit of nutrition that's in it. So I would, and I also like kind of mixing digestive enzymes so that you're getting a good blend. I think the one I took for a long time was I can see the label. It's like Gold Standard or something like that. The one most recent one that I take is Bio Optimizers, and I like that one. I will say I don't take digestive enzymes with every meal. I take them anytime I have raw vegetables for sure. Anytime I have like a protein shake that is like just a shake, because when I take my protein and I put it in something and I bake it, that actually helps to kind of break it down a little bit. It's easier on the gut. But when you just are stirring up a protein shake, it is a little bit harder to digest. So sometimes I'll take them then. And I also do the aloe vera juice every night. So I've kind of got a system that keeps me fairly good in terms of digesting. But those are the two that I have tried before and I like in terms of digestive enzymes. And then it's just finding reputable sources. Kids are vegetarians, so you're not remembering wrong. There you go. Is meal prep a product? No, because she said meal prep was a game changer. No, what that means is that instead of eating as you go, you prep it ahead of time. Now, I'm a big fan of I do things, I don't do necessarily like meal preps. Like I don't prep a meal, but I will prep foods. So like at the beginning of the week, I have 2 to 3 protein ready to go. This week I made some ground chicken and I put like kind of an Italian, like I put Italian seasonings in it, garlic and onion, things like that. I brown that up. I had marinated some chicken that I throw on my little indoor grill. What else did I have? I always have eggs, I have Greek yogurt, I have protein powder. So I have those ready to go. I always have gluten-free tortillas. I always make rice. I always have some form of potato, usually both sweet potatoes and some kind of white potato. So I've got kind of my starches. And then I always wash my veggies and get them ready. So that way when I'm ready to roast them or whatever I'm going to do, it's like throw them in and go. And that's how I do it. So I don't make like a meal per se, but I can take all of those things and do something different with them so that they taste different. So like I either do ground turkey or ground chicken. I can make that in like 3 or 4 different ways. I can put them with rice, I can put them with pasta, I can put them in a burrito. I can do lots of stuff with that. Hopefully that helps, Courtney. Would you recommend someone approach protein if they're mostly plant-based? Does the protein in beans count? It does. So the question Kelly asked is, how do you recommend you get enough protein if you are mostly plant-based? And does the protein in beans count? Or quinoa? Yes, it does. Hemp hearts are pretty high. Edamame, don't eat it every day, but edamame has a decent amount of protein. If you remind me, I have a plant-based higher protein meal plan that I can send you. So anybody who wants it, email me and I'll send it to you.
That would be great. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Good questions, guys. Love this. Okay, onward. Fiber. Fiber supports digestion and elimination. So we don't want stuff sticking in our gut. It also helps with blood sugar control. So I don't know if you guys know this, but especially if you go out to eat or when you're looking at your plate, protein and fiber slow the uptick of carbohydrate. So it slows blood sugar going up, even in the meal you're eating. So if this is kind of how like salads before a meal, right? That fiber helps slow the uptick of any simple carbohydrate like rice, bread, pasta, right? If you were to eat those things on their own, blood sugar, it peaks and then it crashes. Well, what fiber and protein do is it keeps it from peaking and it just keeps it a little bit more stable like that. Good, no questions about that. So you experience fewer crashes, and which means that you're going to experience fewer cravings. It's going to boost satiation and satisfaction. The goal is around 25 to 35 grams per day, but you do want it from a mix. So there's soluble and insoluble fiber. What happens is when people start really dialing into nutrition, they try to get rid of all the grains. And so then all of a sudden you're constipated because you're not getting both types. So yes, veggies, yes, fruits, yes, some kind of grains. The reason that I buy the gluten-free tortillas that I do is because number one, they're gluten-free, but they also come with 7 grams of fiber. And that is helpful. Big fiber, easy ones are avocados. Keep in mind that they are high in fat, so I don't recommend eating a whole one. So avocados have a good amount of fiber in them. Raspberries have a good amount of fiber in them. Pears, which are right now, I'm eating probably a pear every other day. They have a good amount of fiber. And so you do want a good mix. But if you're trying to get it just from vegetables, you're probably not getting enough fiber. And you probably are constipated. Okay. All right, putting it all together. So this is where you are going to want to grab a piece of paper if you can. The goal is to make sure that if your goal is weight loss and or fat loss, you want to make sure you balance or optimize your hormones first. And here's how you can check to see if you are there. You're going to write down SHMECD down your paper like this. S is for sleep. H is for hunger. M is for mood. E is for energy. C is for cravings. And D is for digestion. So you have to ask yourself, is your schmecht in check? And here's how you do that. You're going to rate each, and this is something that when my clients do check-ins every week, I look at their biofeedback. So I take all their data, I look at their feedback, and that's how I can tell what I want them to focus on for that week. So you look at sleep, and you're going to rate it on a scale from 1 to 5. 1 means it's horrible. I have a hard time falling asleep. I don't stay asleep. I wake up tired. Like I may be getting 4 or 5 hours a night. Like it's just a train wreck. That's a 1. A 5 means I go to sleep pretty easily. Sometimes I wake up because I have to go to the bathroom, but I can go right back to sleep. And when I wake up in the morning, I feel very rested. I typically get 7 to 9 hours and it's pretty regular. I feel pretty good about that. That would be a 5. So you would rate yourself, where are you at? You would do the same thing with hunger. 1 means I'm hungry all the time. Like I could eat a meal and then I'm hungry a half an hour later. And this is a thing. So like when you guys see like morbidly obese people, like these shows where they're like my 600-pound friend or whatever, when we talked about leptin and ghrelin, those hormones, the leptin can get turned off. And so literally you can eat a large amount of food and feel hungry right after, right? So a 1 doesn't necessarily mean that, but it means like I feel like I'm always hungry. A 5 doesn't mean that you're not hungry. It just means that you get hungry at meal times, breakfast, lunch, dinner. My body's like, hey, you're hungry, eat. So that's a 5. Rate yourself on 1 to 5. Where do you fall? Mood. 1 is, I know it's me. I can go from screaming at my partner because he's chewing too loud to crying over a commercial that I saw on TV. And I know that it's me. Like there's something wrong. I am having anger issues, and also I'm very teary. I feel like I'm a mess. A 5 doesn't mean that you don't have feelings or that people in general are not annoying, because people can be very annoying, right? 5 just means like, yeah, I have normal emotions, but like they're not ruling my day, right? And I know it's just people stuff and human stuff. It's fine. Energy. 1, I'm tired all the time. I wake up tired. I drag through the day. I get to the end of the day and all I want to do is sleep. And then guess what? I don't really sleep all that well. That's a 1. A 5 means, and this is not like cocaine high. A 5 just means, no, I have the energy to do the things I want throughout the day. I wake up, I feel rested. I have enough energy throughout the day to do whatever I want. And then at the end of the night, I'm relaxed and I go to sleep. C is cravings, which is different than hunger. Hunger means, yeah, I'll take that chicken breast. Yep, I'll take some broccoli. I'm hungry. A C means, oh, I think I'm craving chocolate. Nope, it's a burger. Chips. I need chips. That's a craving. Those are different, right? A craving, and this is where you have to be careful. 1 means it's all day, every day. Like I need chocolate all the time. I'm constantly in need of sugar. This is a big one if your blood sugar's off, right? A 5 does not mean that you don't get them. I get sugar, like chocolate cravings every single day after lunch. Every day. And I don't think it's bad, because I can have a piece of chocolate or something small, or, a little bit. I like to cut little pieces of gluten-free muffin up and have like a small piece, and that's satisfying, right? It's when you're thinking about it all the time. So rate yourself. And then D is digestion. 1 is I'm having a bowel movement, maybe every, 2-3 times a week. I get acid reflux, or I'm bloated, I'm constipated, or I have runny stools. It's any of those things, right? A 5 means I have a bowel movement every day. It's pretty regular, around the same time every day. Consistency wise, it's not super hard. It's also not super soft, right? I don't get really bloated very much. I don't get any acid reflux. I'm not getting any of that stuff. That's a 5. So you rate those. Your goal is to get to where you're 4s and 5s consistently. And once one of those is off, that's the one you go after to fix. And if it's sleep, so let's say that sleep is off. Let's say that sleep and cravings are both 3. Fix sleep. By fixing sleep, it'll fix the cravings. Does that make sense to everybody? Maybe that was going to get you. How do you describe 5 for hunger? A 5 is I get hungry at meal times. So I'm hungry for breakfast. I'm hungry for lunch. So I still get hunger cues, but like it's at normal times. So you're going to use those. You're going to approach this by supporting your metabolism, by fueling it, not overfueling, but fueling it. And you start with the big 3 and then you layer in more. And this is why I kind of hesitated on the macros part of this, because macros take practice in figuring out what works for you. So let's say that I'm watching my tracker and it's saying I burn roughly 2,500 to 2,700 calories a day. Okay. So I go, all right, well, let me plug in 2,200 calories, because Jen said not too big of a deficit, right? Well, the problem is that none of this is completely accurate. And then you're also you're having to figure out calorically how that works. And then we've got to figure out protein, carbs, and fats. And there are hormonal things we have to take into consideration. There is activity level that we have to take into consideration. There's digestive things we have to take into consideration. So like if you're like me and you have, and a lot of women start having gallbladder issues as you go into midlife, you don't process fat as well. Ooh, what are you going to do? Right? So that's why, yes, there's a way to start to figure out macros first. But again, you start with the big three, and most of those things are going to answer themselves. Blood sugar stabilizes, like, Tanya, just by simply eating breakfast, right? All of a sudden, inflammation goes down, water goes down, lost 2 pounds, energy goes up. And that will continue to happen. So start with your big three. Work on getting your protein, work on getting your fiber, work on getting your water in. And typically what will happen is your hunger cues will go down. And so when we talk about moderation, it's so much easier because people always ask, like, how do you have like that in a muffin? Because I'm already full. I'm already satisfied because I got enough protein, I got some fiber. I like my food that I eat. So it's not like I feel restricted. So by then I'm just like, oh, I just want a little taste. And that's how you get to moderation, where you can have sweet things without overindulging. Questions? So we're gonna start there. All right, I'm gonna open it up. You can either, so here's the action. Here's what I would recommend you do. Track your water. And I'm not a big fan of like little glasses because then you do have to think about it too much. I like big jugs, at least 30, 40 ounces. Because if you're like, I got to get to 90, okay, well then you got to drink 3 of those bad boys or 2 of those bad boys. That's easier to track. Start tracking your protein. You don't even need MyFitnessPal to do this. You could just literally just keep track on a piece of paper. Be like, all right, how close am I to this? You do need to weigh and measure. You need a little measuring scale so you can figure this out. Eyeballing does not work. And then start looking at your fiber content and start getting closer to the numbers we talked about. Then pay attention to cravings and energy levels. Where are those at? And then reflect like, okay, are my meals pretty balanced? Am I getting enough fiber throughout the day? Am I getting enough protein? Not, 60 grams here and 10 grams here. Like it's pretty even throughout the day. So that helps with digestion. And then we can talk about like, all right, how do you put all this together? That's where I would recommend you start. Hold on, I saw a Water Llama app to help track water intake. There you go, guys. Thank you, Rebecca. I don't know that have I heard of that one? I might have. Actually, I have. Never seen it, but if you guys need help tracking water, Water Llama it is. Do you recommend anything different for insulin resistance and PCOS? Yes. Number one, strength train. We're going to talk about this next week too. One of the best things that you can do for insulin resistant, two things. It's 2 things that you can do for insulin resistance. Best things you can do. Number one, strength train. And the reason being is that muscle, remember that it needs it. The muscle needs the insulin in order to grow more muscle. So when you strength train, any extra insulin, the muscle will go, thank you, and it will pull it in. So basically, insulin resistance, guys, is where typically carbohydrates, but insulin is released by the pancreas. And so that insulin then goes knocking on the cell, the door of the cell, and it's like, hey, take me in and use me. Well, if you have too much insulin consistently over time, that cell becomes resistant to that message. And so it doesn't pull the insulin in to be used, which then causes a bigger problem because then there's a feedback loop to your brain. And it's like, hey, we didn't get it. And so then the brain releases even more. And so that's how you can get your system flooded with too much insulin. So strength training is one. And then the second is leisure walking, not steps, not walking at a quick clip. Leisure walking, especially in nature, helps calm stress hormones down, which has a big impact on PCOS. One of the best things that you can do for PCOS is manage your stress levels because you are even more stress sensitive. And most women in midlife are already more stress sensitive. So you're just layering it on. And so when we talk about how the metabolism operates, that barometer of stress is high. We have to figure out so when we do the breathing at the end, that calms everything back down. Does that help?